Peace, Infinite Waters, diving deep once again. We have a very special episode. How to remove negative subconscious beliefs. We want to welcome Carol Morgan. Carol Morgan has a PhD in communication and is a professor at Wright State University. She is also a motivational expert on the TV show Living Daytona, the co-host of a popular radio show, video expert for ehows.com, frequent keynote speaker, and a member of Inspirees.com's expert network. You can subscribe to her blog, take her e-courses, and check out her books at www.drcarolmorgan.com. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Carol, for taking time out of your busy schedule.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, we're going to dive deep.
Yes.
I love your articles on Lifehacker. Phenomenal.
Oh, thank you. I love writing for it. And, that's one of the things that I love doing is getting my knowledge outside of the traditional classroom. And so I love writing those articles and doing all sorts of stuff like this. So, thank you.
Where did this journey first begin for you?
Well, probably when I was a teenager. My mom was a nun, a Catholic nun, before she met my dad and had us 3 children. And so now when she's obviously not in it anymore, and she's gone on this spiritual journey since then, and she started exploring all kinds of different spirituality, and it kind of led her to a lot of Eastern beliefs like reincarnation, all these books. And so by the time I was a teenager and into college, she kept passing on books to me. And she's such a seeker and a curious soul, and so am I. And so I started reading all of these books about spirituality. And one group of books in particular was about past life regression. And it was written by a man named Dick Sutphin, who ironically has become a good friend of mine and is a co-writer on my book. But anyway, in his books, a lot of them, he talks about how past life regression, and if people don't know what that is, it's basically using hypnosis to uncover, I know not everybody believes in past lives, but, let's say somebody's really overweight in this life, and maybe they discovered in a past life that they starved to death, and so your subconscious mind is overcompensating for that by keeping weight on you because you don't want to starve to death. So it was real case studies like that I read in a lot of these books I was reading that started to fascinate me. And it's not even just rooted in past lives, because not everybody believes in past lives, but I'm a communication professor too, and so I've discovered that really my interest in all of that spiritual stuff and the stuff that I teach now is really interconnected, because when I teach about family communication, I talk about all of the messages that we get, not only from our family, but from our siblings, from our peers, from the media, the world.
Right.
And so, parents mean well, but even if it's just like, money doesn't grow on trees, what do you think I'm made of? Money. And if you hear these messages too many times as a kid, it's going to really block you, and you don't even know it. And that's one of the things I do when I do like workshops and seminars or speaking events. Especially around money, people have a lot of blocks because they did hear these negative messages growing up, like, no, we can't afford that, or, I'm not made of money, or no, when it comes to money. So a lot of us have these subconscious blocks like, oh, okay, there's not enough money, or I'm not going to have enough money. One of the things I like to do with people in a group too is do kind of this, it's a process I call, and I read out about 10 different statements, and I have them fill in like the first thought that comes to mind. And one of them is, money is, and then they just have to, like, don't even think about it. And a lot of people say some negative things, like it's the root of all evil, or, if I say rich people are, they go greedy, or
Yes.
things like that. And they're like, oh, I didn't know I believed that. And so that's really what I like to get to is that split second before you can even process it. Those are your subconscious beliefs that are lurking around and you don't even know it.
Right. What I love about your articles is that people can relate to them because you talk about real issues, and that's what I love about them. And what are some of the common negative subconscious beliefs we have. I know one: I am not good enough.
Oh, that's huge. I watched one of your other podcasts, and not the whole thing, but you're talking about how most people just don't love themselves. And we really get so many negative messages. I mean, even if you have parents who are positive and give you a lot of messages, there's always some sort of negative processing that goes on in our world because we just live in a world of negativity, unfortunately. Like, for instance, I mean, my parents were pretty positive and they gave me a lot of positive messages. And in general, I have pretty good self-esteem. And I don't attribute that to me, I attribute it to them because they gave me positive messages. However, I'm the youngest of three girls, and my oldest sister, well, both of them actually, but in particular my oldest sister, who's 6 years older than me, has always been like model skinny, like super small and skinny. And my middle sister was not quite as skinny, but pretty close. And I've never been overweight. I've been just comparing myself to my sisters, unfortunately gave me a worse body image than I would prefer. And so I've been fighting that, thinking, I look fine. I'm trying to reprogram myself with that. So, it's not even so much that my parents ever said anything negative about my body or my weight, but just me comparing to my sisters, or, we see all these movie stars out there who are gorgeous, and, if there's a tabloid magazine and they gain 2 pounds, they're like, oh my gosh, they're fat. And it's really bad on all of our self-esteem. So I think that, I think people really need to learn to love themselves and accept themselves. And that's why I do like writing those articles, because, and what I teach, not only just in the college classrooms, but all of this kind of stuff is really real world applicable. And
Right.
I've been a searcher and focus on self-improvement my whole life, and that's what I tell my students. It's like, I don't want you to just like get an A and leave. I want you to use this stuff. I want you to do self-reflection and change your life for the better. But it really starts with you, and that's what my motto is like success from the inside out. You can't be successful. Like, for me, success is happiness, but you have to start here. You need to change your thought processes. But if these subconscious thought processes are blocking us and we don't even know it, then we have a problem.
I say that the body is the subconscious mind, and a big problem is we think our thoughts are real.
Right.
And we have this attachment to our thoughts. What I love about one of your articles, you said 12 toxic thoughts you need to drop for a better life. Yeah. Please go into that, because that's so important right now.
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me, and I didn't memorize all of them, but that was my most popular article on Lifehack. It was shared over like 86,000 times on social media, which for me is so humbling, because I'm like, not only did 86,000 people like it enough to share it, I mean, not from an ego perspective,
right?
But just like, wow, I'm so happy that I could help them at least. And that's really interesting to me that particular article was the most popular. I had a couple articles that were pretty popular too. One was about getting through rough times in your life, and that was shared like 63,000 times or something. But I think that maybe the article was a wake-up call for people. Like, I'm not so sure they knew that they had those thoughts running through their head. I've had people actually say that, oh, wow, thank you, or, oh, no, I saw myself in 10 of those 12 things. Thanks for pointing that out to me. So, I don't have all of them in front of me, but it's, a lot of them are things like, you're not a victim. A lot of people think that we are a victim of what happens to us. And yes, we can't control everything that happens to us, but what we can control is how we think about what happens to us. And so one of my many mottos is, it's not a problem unless you think it's a problem. And if it's not a problem, then it's a learning opportunity. And so I figure that everything in life has the potential to be a learning opportunity, if we choose to make it that way. But so many people just dwell on the negatives, and therefore they have all these toxic thoughts that go through their mind that just send them into really kind of a downward negative spiral. So, yeah, that article in particular, I it really opened my eyes a lot to what people need in life
Right,
and what they're
right.
struggling with. I mean, really, their own worst enemy is themselves, right? Like you said, the
Yes.
thoughts we have aren't real, but we treat them as if they're real. And that's where the problem is. So,
Well, there are so many self-help books out there.
yeah.
Just be positive. Just think happy thoughts. And many people are doing that, but it's not working. And I talk of that we shouldn't be afraid of our so-called negative thoughts. We should surrender to them.
Yeah.
What's your take on that in terms of people who just want to get rid of negative thoughts? Does that create resistance, which makes them stronger?
Oh, that's a really good question. Well, I think we live in a society that's really, well, a world really that's really quick fix. If you want to lose weight, we all really want to have that magic pill that you take and you don't have to, exercise or eat better. So we just want it really fast. And so I think that a lot of people think that if they read a book or they, try something for a while, then their whole life will change. For instance, in my race class and gender class that I teach, I have them read Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus, which is about gender differences. And we discuss in there, like, do you think that people who read this book will actually improve their relationships? And, what I try to say is it's great. It's a starting point. It's better than not reading it. But, to have permanent change takes daily, sometimes every second, every minute effort and conscious choice. And I think that so many people live unconsciously. They kind of go through life with blinders on and they don't even know it. And so reading these books, these self-help books, they say, hey, yeah, just be positive. Easier said than done, because you need to keep doing it. Because I'm not
Right,
a brain researcher or anything, but I do know enough to know that when you keep thinking any thought, positive or negative, it creates the neural pathways in your brain and makes it stronger. So if you've been saying to yourself your whole life, I'm a failure, I'm never going to amount to anything, I know people like that who do that. And so anything that comes their way, they interpret it through this lens of, I'm a failure, I'm a loser, it's never going to work out. But if they've had that thought their whole life, that the pathways in their brain are so strong. So it's going to take even longer for them to, like, it's kind of like a muscle, like you have to lift weights to make your muscles bigger. Kind of the same thing with your brain. It's not going to happen overnight. You have to every day put conscious thought and effort into it. And it's not as easy for a lot of people as it sounds. Some people are
right.
born into optimistic, happy families like myself, which I'm very happy about. But I know so many people who are born into pessimistic families, and that's just normal and natural for them. And they don't even know who they are without that negative thinking.
Right, right. And we see in today's society, a lot of us, we are more stressed out than ever
Oh,
because
yes.
people are rushing all around the place. And many times I find that find a lot of balance going into nature. How does one stay balanced in this very fast-paced world?
That's a great question. Actually, one of the articles I wrote, another article for Life Hack, I think it was about balancing and saying no, which ironically was not one of the ones that was shared enough, which I was really fascinated about because I know so many people who are so stressed out. Um, I don't know what it's like in other countries, but I know at least here in the United States, or at least, with a lot of people I know, if they have kids, it's like if your kid is not a superstar soccer player by the time they're 3 years old, then you're like this loser parent. And so, I know parents who have like four kids and they're all in these activities, and so they run around all day and I'm not one of those people. I mean, I think it's great to have my kids. I have two kids, two boys who are 11 and 13, and they're in activities, but to a point. Like, for instance, my youngest is very athletic and he loves basketball. And there was an opportunity for him to try out for a competitive basketball team that traveled around within like 1 to 2 hours from where we lived. And so that would require pretty much like all weekend trips for basketball games. And not only that, but staying overnight and spending money on hotel rooms. And I thought, you know what? I'm not going to do that. And a lot of people would say that makes me a bad mother. But I didn't say he couldn't play basketball. I said
Right.
he couldn't, change the entire family's life because of it, because I value family dinners, because research really shows like when you meet as a family at dinner, the kids do a lot better in life because they have the opportunity to talk to the parents. But when you're running around all the time, you don't have the opportunity really to stop and talk to your kids. And that's where all of these thoughts come from when we're kids. We get these messages and it forms us into who we are. So, I think it's as simple as saying no. You say no to your kids. And I think a lot of parents have a problem saying no, not only to their kids, but to anything. Like I had dinner with a friend last night and she got asked to do, I don't know, chair a committee or something. And her first instinct was to say yes because she's a nice person, but then she stepped back and said, well, let me think about it. And so she decided that she didn't have the energy or the time for it. And that's okay. But I think that our society just really programs into us that we're not successful or our kids are not successful unless we are crazy, busy, stressed out all the time. And
Right.
like I said, meditation, being out in nature, having quiet alone time is so important. Um, I'm a single mom too, and I actually think I'm a better mom because they go to their dads, not quite half the time, but a lot of the time, and I get to recharge. And I don't think that makes me a bad person. I think I'm a better mother because of that, because I get me time. And so I think people just really need to prioritize themselves, and the family and family unit, and realize that quiet time and communication with each other is really important for balance, because I think most people really don't have balance.
How are we creating our own reality?
Well, I think it does start with our belief system, as we just talked about, with our thoughts and our values. But the law of attraction, if anyone's read books like The Secret or some other law of attraction books, some people's understanding of the law of attraction is just like, oh, well, it's just positive thinking. It's just change your thoughts and good things will happen. You think about, having more money and it just comes to you. And there is some truth to that, but anyone who knows a little bit more about the science behind it, that the vibrations that we have with our thoughts and our emotions actually do affect our world. There's actually a book called the Science Behind the Secret, and it was written by a quantum physicist. I forgot his name, but I read it, and it really explained why the law of attraction works. Because, and again, I'm no quantum physicist, I know like this much about it, but the probabilities and the wave particles, like there's something about a quiff. I don't even know what that is, but it goes out and it finally meets other quifts, and that's what manifests into reality. So if you're putting out all these negative thoughts all the time, the vibration you're putting out and the quiffs or whatever are going out and creating that for you. So as you probably know too, the range of emotions, you have love and appreciation on one end, which is the highest vibrating, and the lowest at the other end, which is fear and hatred and all
Right,
those
right.
emotions, which vibrate very slowly. So I actually talk about the law of attraction in my relationship classes, and I relate it to relationships, and I say, you know, whenever you're first in love, you're putting out all these positive thoughts and emotions, and scientists have measured this, and so of course, when you're putting out positive emotions, people feel it, as do I. Like some people just have great energy and some people have really bad energy, and there's science behind that. So I think those thoughts and emotions really do help create our reality. I wish I knew more about the science behind it, like quantum physics, but I don't. But so I think there's that. It all starts with our thoughts and our emotions, but it also is partially dependent on our viewpoint and how we view reality and how we view what happens to us. I've known people who have horrific things happen to them. They've lost children, they've had horrible things, they've had cancer, and a lot of them just use that horrible experience for the betterment of not only themselves, but of the world. So, a lot of people with a negative mindset would let it ruin their life, but other people with positive mindsets take that and create the reality they want. It may not be the exact reality they want.
Right, right.
They make the best of it. So I think that, I'd say those two things, the vibration and the science probably do literally create our world, but it really is up to us. I mean, they kind of go hand in hand. Your positive
Right,
thoughts
right.
kind of still create,
And the environment is also a big factor when we talk
oh,
of
yeah.
epigenetics, how our environment changes our DNA structure. And that affects our subconscious beliefs, because as much as we do create our own reality, it's also what we're taking in when we can look at the role of the media,
Oh,
messages from our parents and our peers, our workplace. It's all connected, right?
it is. And I think, at least in my experience with the students, and whenever I do speeches or seminars, um, people are shocked that they have all these thoughts in their head. Once I point them out, they're like, "Oh, wow, I didn't know." And therein lies the problem. And that's what I called kind of sleepwalking through life, going through life with blinders on. One of the papers I have my students write in my relationship classes is what kind of messages they got as a child, or what kind of communication behavior was modeled. And it might sound like an easy paper, but they're usually like, "Oh my gosh, I never thought of this before. I have no idea." But then when they stop to reflect on it, they figure it out. And so everything starts with awareness, and you cannot change what you don't recognize. And so, exploring these negative thoughts that you have lurking in your mind that you might not even know, that come from everywhere, like you said. First step is awareness, and then the next step is to figure out how to change that.
Right, right. And right now, what we're seeing is that we're living in a whole new world. We're seeing the technology is increasing, but also we're getting a greater awareness of how things aren't always what they seem.
Oh, yeah.
And we were talking before this about your upcoming projects. Please go into that.
Okay, great. I actually, one of the things that I do is, besides writing for Lifehack, I write for, it's a website and a magazine called BrainSpeak, brainspeak.com, and then BrainSpeak Magazine, which is a digital magazine. And like I said earlier, I've been always a searcher and a seeker and a curious soul my whole life. And anything that's weird to the normal person is cool for me. Like I don't know that I believe it or I don't, but I just want to explore it. I went through a phase of reading about alien abductions, and a phase of reading about quantum physics, and a phase about, all of this quote unquote weird stuff that the average person just doesn't think about. If they do, a lot of people find it really interesting. In fact, I encounter a lot of people who may really believe in past lives, but they're like, "Oh, no, I don't talk about that because people think I'm weird."
Right.
So anyway, BrainSpeak magazine liked some of my work in the articles, so they asked me to write a recurring column, and they're called A Walk on the Woo Side. And the woo side is really all things that are weird to the normal person. And one of my passions have been throughout my whole life is to make the weird stuff not so weird, or to make it okay for people to go out and explore that stuff without feeling like they are weird.
Right.
So they wanted. So anyway, I was writing this article called "A Walk on the Woo Side," that's what it's about. Like, hey, let's take all this weird stuff and make it demystified. Make it less strange. So anyway, so the owners liked it so much that they asked me to start a podcast or radio show kind of thing with it, and under the same name, A Walk on the Woo Side. And so that's probably going to start in maybe next couple of weeks. But what I'm going to do is have people who write books, whether it's experts or whether it's just normal people who have had weird experiences. Like for instance, I had a student last year who lived with a ghost in her house. I mean, she said it was as bad of, not evil like possessing or anything, but it would move chairs around and slam doors. And she said it even like pulled the covers off of her bed at night. And I mean, she just talked about it as if it was someone who lived in the house with her. At first she was weirded out by it, but now she's like, nah, it's just the ghost we live with. I'm like, okay. And so just whether it's real experiences like that or an expert who does research on it, I'm going to have people on the show and talk about all sorts of weird stuff and try to
Well,
make sense of it.
this is
Yeah.
what we do in Infinite Waters. We dive deep. And one of the biggest things I've found is that all of us, we have different thoughts which are beyond the norm, but it's fear of being judged. So you talk of how to deal with judgmental people that call us crazy, weird, strange. How do we deal with this?
Well, that's a good question because, as I said, my mom originally got me into this, and she was a searcher. And the first seminar that she went to, which was a spiritual, new age kind of woo sort of seminar, she thought she was going to have a whole bunch of weirdos there, like smoking dope, or she just thought she'd be the only normal person there. Anyway, this is back like in the 80s or 70s, and she said everybody there was normal. Everybody was like in a business suit and looked normal, and so she was like, oh, I guess I'm not alone, that other people like me think about this stuff too. So I think that we live in a culture where we care too much about what other people think. We are so self-conscious, and so we judge ourselves so hard. And we think other people are judging us that harshly. And they're probably not. I always say that everybody else is so busy judging themselves that they're probably not judging you nearly as much as you think they are.
Right.
So to say, hey, just don't care about what other people think, easier said than done for a lot of people. But like for me, this is talking about the woo stuff and having a new podcast radio show about weird stuff is not my day job. My day job is teaching communication and writing motivational articles and talking about your thoughts and being happier. But so I'm kind of stepping out into not really
different territory.
Yeah, people wouldn't expect from me.
Yeah.
I don't really go around talking about all this stuff all these books that I read and all the stuff that I think about. And for about a half a second, I thought, I wonder how people who know me as this person, this motivational person, what they're going to think about me taking a walk on the woo side. And I just thought, I don't care because it's part of me. And if they don't want to listen to it, they don't have to. And if they think less of me because of it, that's okay. I can't control what other people think. I can only follow my own heart. And so I think we all need to adopt that attitude that do what makes you happy. If people want to judge you, they'll judge you. Let them judge you. The only thing that you cannot do is judge yourself.
Right.
You can't please everybody.
Yeah, I see that we're living in a kind of matrix, and you are a professor of communication, and I feel words are so powerful because once you start going to the woo side, people might call you a conspiracy theorist.
They might.
You almost get put into a box. So it's almost like it's very clever how the system is designed because they don't really allow free thought without labeling you. They'll say, oh, it's that stuff. It's that, you see.
Right.
So how do words govern us, and how can we use words to empower us in helping us become the greatest versions of ourselves?
Well, that's a really interesting question, too. I'm going to cite a research study that I read about words. You've probably heard of the book. This is not the study I was going to talk about, but Messages in Water. Have you read the book or heard about it?
I've heard of it.
Okay. Well, basically, it's like your thoughts have your vibrations, and the positive thoughts change the molecular structure of water positively, and the negative ones change the molecular structure negatively. And so, of course, what are those words? I mean, thoughts are words. We think in words. And so what are those thoughts doing to our body? So if those negative thoughts are changing negatively, I mean, we're like 80% water anyway, so it's changing our bodies. So the words we have in our thoughts or in our, actual speaking are affecting our body. And this is a study I was going to talk about. There's some study where they had two groups of people, and they had a bunch of different words written. I don't know, they put them like in an envelope, I think. In one group had a bunch of positive words like joy, happiness, all good words. And the other one had bad words like negative, hatred and fear. And the people didn't even know what words they were carrying around, but they carried around for maybe a month or so. And they didn't even tell them to do anything else. Just carry this envelope around with you all the time, which sounds weird. And then they came back after like, I don't know, a month or so, and they're like, so how's your life? Has it changed? Is it the same? And the people who carried around the positive words, they're like, I don't know, I feel good. Things are happening in my life, and I'm happy and feel great. And the other group said, I don't know, thing after thing kept going wrong, and now I'm like so negative. I mean, it just felt worse. And so, that's fascinating because the people didn't even know what words they were carrying around. And they weren't spoken, and they weren't even thought of in your head, but they still affected them on some subconscious level. So words are everything. There we have the sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. I think words hurt more than an actual, punch in the face, or, because at least those scars heal. But if you don't know what words you are using or other people are using to hurt you, not only your mind and your spirit, but your body. I don't know if you've read the book. I think it's Bruce Lipton who wrote it, The Biology of Belief.
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Great book.
Yeah. And he talks about literally our thoughts do change our DNA, like you said earlier. It can turn on positive genes or off positive genes. And, I heard of some other study. I don't know if it was in this book or not, but they separated people's DNA from themselves, and they put it in a different room, and then they put it like on the other side of the country, and then they put it like in China, and they had them think different thoughts, and they looked at what the DNA did. And even if like I'm here in Dayton, Ohio, and my DNA was saying, if I had a thought, like a positive thought or negative thought, my DNA responded simultaneously as if it was already still in my body, so you cannot say that that's not powerful and very woo, right?
Right.
My DNA respond when it's in China.
Right. Well, I feel it's all coming out right now, and this stuff will be in the normal conversation in a couple of years, because I just feel people are ready for it. And I just want to thank you so much for diving deep with us. And the next time you're on, I would love to talk about relationships and self-love, because I know you are an expert on that. But please let us know of whatever else you've got going on, and just how we can contact you.
Of course. You want me to tell you now? Or
Yes.
Oh, okay. What else I have going on, you mean?
Right.
Okay. Well, that's like the biggest thing coming up. So if anyone wants to tune in, it will... actually, you can find me on Facebook. I have a fan page, Dr. Carol Morgan, but we also have a fan page called A Walk on the Woo Side, and it's WOO. That's how it's spelled, A Walk on the Woo Side. We just started it, so if you want to, I've been posting some stuff, but we don't have a lot of people liking it yet. But you can also find me again on my website, which is drcarolmorgan.com. It's drcarolmorgan.com, and my relationship book that I wrote is kind of an integration of relationships and the woo stuff as well.
Right. Well, give us a snippet, because one thing I've found in relationships is that the greatest relationship lies within ourselves. And when we talk of love, I feel many of us, we feel we possess each other in relationships, and this creates a lot of problems.
Yes.
How do we go about creating more harmonious relationships?
Wow. It all starts with you. It really does. I know people who have been in a lot of what we normal people would call woo kind of situations. Like they were swingers, or they were into S&M, or they were... my battery's running low. Hold on.
Okay.
I need to just plug it in. So, most people believe in monogamy and want to possess that person. But I'm a believer. I'm not saying monogamy is bad, great, but for some people, maybe they need to try something different. If you think about it, monogamy is, I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me, but kind of based in fear because, you know, you're mine and you're only mine and nobody else can have you. And I'm not suggesting that we just all go out and, date a million people at once, but that possession and jealousy that we feel in relationships really is fear-based. It's a fear-based emotion. And, a lot of people think that's love. They think, oh, well, he or she's jealous of me or possessive of me, and so they must love me. Well, I think real love frees and it doesn't cage you. I've been in relationships before where I felt trapped because of one thing or another. And so, there's that saying, if you love someone, set them free. If they come back, they're yours. If they didn't, they never were. But even in a relationship, you can still leave the door to that cage open. And if they want to leave, you give them the freedom to leave without any fear. I think a lot of people have a problem with that. But in my relationship book, it's called Radical Relationship Resource. And I wrote it with Dick Sutphin, who is, ironically, the person I read all the past life regression books about earlier on when I was in college. And that was the whole point of that book, is to really blend normal relationship stuff with the woo, spiritual, wacky, out there kind of things. The book isn't all like that. Probably 75% of it is pretty normal.
Right.
But we do put in these radical ideas that a lot of people be like, what's that? And they don't have to read that part if they don't want to. But it really is a resource book. Every page is a different idea to try out in your relationship. And then you have the woo, wacky stuff in there too.
Right. Well, thank you so much. Once again, www.drcarolmorgan.com. I am so grateful to have you on because reading your articles, you've inspired me, and I know you're going to inspire the Infinite Waters family. There is so much potential we all have in becoming the greatest versions of ourselves, and it all starts in tapping into the power of yourself. We are here, Infinite Waters, diving deep once again. Stay well, stay healthy. Peace.